Hello, good evening. I'm Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Oral Gibbs Live. And with me this evening is a well-known gentleman. He's one of the top lions in St. Martin, Mr. Buncamper. How are you doing?
I'm all right, Earl. Good evening to all.
It's good to have you here. Thanks for accepting the invitation to be here this evening. I know you, for many years, you've been in the Lions Club, from the time you was a teenager?
Yeah, old teenager. My mother and father were Lions, and I used to be hanging around the organization, but I was away studying. So I did join the Leos, though, the youth movement at 27, and at 30 I became a Lion. Today I'm 52, so I have about 25 years in the movement.
And your wife is also in the same?
She's a Rotarian. She's in the Rotary,
yeah. So the Rotary and the Lions Club.
Both service organizations, different disciplines, but basically we both serve mankind.
I know a few years ago I spoke with you on this program, I think, about the work you're doing too with youngsters that come into problems with the law. Yep. You're head of the Department of Infrastructure Management, former public work. Yep. How's that going now? Are you still involved in that?
Well, yeah, it's a little more structured now than it was when we started. Way back in the 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
We were approached by the then public prosecutor, Mr. Cormerks. He approached actually two of us, Mr. Henry Ellis and myself. And he had, I think that time was Commissioner Roy Marlin was involved, and we were seeking an alternative to incarceration. That's basically what it was. Putting young boys that, got maybe involved in a fight or stole something, putting them up there with hardcore criminals in Point Blanche was not the solution. So what we did is we found community punishment. They were given a punishment in the form of community service, and they had to do work under the auspices of the Department of Public Works. For that, I took some lessons, I would say, and then a test, and I was appointed as an extraordinary police officer, together with Mr. Irvin Esdale, as we said. Right. The two of us, we ran this for many years, and back in 2013, about 5 or 6 members from my department also became extraordinary police officers, and my right hand in the office, Mr. Edelmiro Janssen, he is now directly handling most of it for me when it comes to the contractual supervision and ensuring that we play by the rules and that the contracts are followed correctly. Because there are two groups of persons we deal with right now. We still have those youngsters that right now come from the court of guardianship. Anyone younger than 18 years and comes in contact with the law, very often the court of guardianship is involved immediately when there's a punishment, and we deal with the court of guardianship and those youngsters, their parents. They sign contracts, they do their work, and then they are turned back over to the court of guardianship after they are finished with us. And I believe then after that it's settled legally, and they go their jolly way. For the elders, the ones older than 18 years, they go through what we call the Stichting Justitiële Inrichtingen. That's an organization that handles that, reclassering, I would say. They handle those, and the same thing, contracts, time they have to do the works. And most of the time we put them, the youngsters, we try to keep them in Public Works' yard a little more, teach them a little trade, and naturally what I was a very staunch supporter is that these kids had to go back to school. You couldn't just take them out of school for 120 hours, which is basically, when you do it by 8, it's 15 days, it's 3 weeks of school. You can't just take a child out of school for 3 weeks. So we would try to work them after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, depending which school they came for. Saturday and Sundays, I had some staff that was very willing to work with some of these guys. No overtime was paid to the staff, but we would come in, make them do things, clean up the yard, teach them how to make cabinets, simple things that we thought would give them a chance back in life, because it's a second chance you're giving them. You don't want to make Point Blanche prison a revolving door, because if they go in there, they'll come back out, they'll go right back in, because they're not going to be taught anything in 3 weeks in prison. They're just going to be taught how to do it better. But I think the problem that we still have is that very often the aftercare is not there. So yes, they do their punishment. Then what? You put them right back in the same situation they were in. That is still lacking. I have not seen that gap closed in such a manner that you can say, hey, the aftercare is of such substance that really is going to make, because the kids keep coming. It's not slowing
So
down.
is it getting, are you seeing more now than in the past?
I'm seeing younger ones.
Younger ones?
Yeah, that's scary. I'm seeing, there was a time we had a flux of girls, as if girls gone wild. It was, we had a lot of girls came into the system, and when they had punishment, it was a little more difficult. How did we deal with those? Because where do you put them? So we were very fortunate that we got help from Sister Basilia Center and the Samaritan Home. Mrs. Boutique, she made the place available where we could have placed a lot of the girls. You can't put the girls them in the trenches with the boys. I mean, punishment is punishment, I understand that, but there's a reason for the punishment, and you want something good to come out of the punishment. So in that sense, we were looking for suitable places for them.
So then when a youngster comes into problem with the law and there's a sentence, instead of going to prison, they will send them to on parole with your...
There are two steps. You have two scenarios. The first scenario is you are caught, you did something illegally, and you get a conditional punishment that is agreed upon prior to going to courts. If you would accept that community service in some form or fashion, you don't need to go to courts anymore. It's written off. You don't have a police record either. Basically, that's what it was. That's what it boiled down to. The second scenario is you said, no, I taken my chance, I go into court, and you can then be convicted to doing time.
Okay.
So there were two scenarios that we worked with. The scenario of you come to a settlement with the public prosecutor's office without having to go to courts. You sign to such, and you do your community service, and then after that it's over. We wash hands and everybody go their way. The second one is you go to court, you're convicted, and you have a police record.
Now, that is only for anyone that's below age 18?
No, I think that's the prerogative of the public prosecutor. I don't know how they do that exactly. We only get the case with the hours. So it can be a verdict, or it can be directed from the public prosecutor's office.
Has it been difficult working with some of these young people in terms of when they have to come there and be supervised, etc., in public works?
I think young people. I have a young son, 22. I have a young daughter, 25. It is very often we tend to try to boss them, guide them in a way that we believe is the right way, because that's the way we were brought up. Young people are being brought up different by social media, by TV, by their friends, even by their parents. And so how you go about understanding each other and reasoning with each other is a challenge on its own. You can say, well, I am the boss. I have the big stick in my hand. You will do as I say, or I will beat you. And very often, you will not get a productive person, nor a productive working relationship. We try to understand them a little bit. Why did you do this? First of all, why did you do it? There had to be a need for you to do what you did. And if you can fix that need sometimes, you have solved a big part of the problem that you have on hand. I don't do it right now anymore because my workload doesn't really permit me very often. But I used to make a lot of visits to a lot of the homes of the youngsters to see what we can do there too. Because the punishment on its own and having him do his hours, that is very easy. That's the easiest part.
The home environment is...
But the home environment very often was a very ticklish part. And sometimes even the school environment, because the kids had no money to eat in the morning.
Wow.
So the child could not focus. The child had to hustle to eat something. He had to hustle to get his younger brothers and sisters something to eat.
All this in St. Martin?
Man, listen, we in St. Martin have to stop pretending that we live in a paradise. Yes, we have a beautiful island, but when you lift up the blanket, there was a gentleman that I have a lot of respect for. He said, when you peel the cover from the cow doo-doo, that's when it stinks. If you leave the cover on, it don't stink.
Yeah.
We have a lot of things in St. Martin that are not right, and we just have to deal with them. If we accept that we have problems with these youngsters, and I must say, kudos to the present Minister of Education. I really like her approach, Yes, we can. Everybody can achieve something if we only give them a fair chance. But in the same breath, you must be prepared for when the chance reaches. And very often the chance passes you. Yeah. You don't even realize it passed you because you were not ready for it. So young people must be respected, but they must give respect. We don't have to accept their culture, but we must respect their culture. And I think this is where we differ very often. We want to impose on people instead of sometimes coming to a consensus on certain things, And I think with young people, I have dealt with them a lot. I work with them motivationally, one-on-one very often. I go to them and I just talk to them and say, why did you do this? Or why are you doing this? And most of the time you realize it's a cry for attention. It's a simple cry for attention. Because one did it, the other one is doing it so he can fit in. Peer pressures and those type of things are things we have tried to deal with. But, one or two people cannot make a difference. But at least I try so that I don't have to wonder if I tried what would have happened. We have had some success stories. We have had some failures. It comes hand in hand.
With the failures, it takes a while to know, you find out pretty quickly.
When I say failures, I mean that during community service, we have had tragic loss of life.
Really?
The service, we had agreed, for example, to take a child home. After community service, when they finish working for us, we take them home. The reason we do that is very often these youngsters are involved in gangs. Oh. And if you let them walk home, the boys will be waiting for them down the road very often. We used to have a kitchen in the past in Public Works Yard, and we used to cook a warm meal. A lot of the boys them used to cook at 12 o'clock. They used to put their money together and cook. So we would always have a plate or two extra, so when the youngsters come from school, they could have a meal. And then they go and do their community service. So we used to try to create the family atmosphere. I have today, working in government, a few boys that did community service and have turned out to be great mechanics for me.
Wow.
So, there are success stories, but there have been some sad ones too.
I think with Mr. Claudius Buncamper. Mr. Buncamper is head of infrastructure management. That's from Public Works here in St. Martin. And we speak with him about the work they're doing with youngsters. When you look at young people that, as you say, come in problem with the law, they have an option to either come and work with you at public work in your staff or go to prison. I'm sure most of them take the option to come in.
Yes, it would be. I know they used to say, "Oh God, when you go by Buncamper, you're not free." And it was, you were on punishment. But not because you're on punishment means I should not try to teach you something or try to change you for the better. And while we would work with them, you always had a few apples in between that you just couldn't change them. And eventually you'd have to write to the public prosecutor's office and say, they failed, they are not coming to work, they're not listening. There were rules. You were not allowed to have your phone, you couldn't bring no marijuana on the job. I mean, we even had a fellow man, the guy was so good, he was running business out of we had him placed at the sewage plant. And we realized that we were getting a lot of visitors at the sewage plant. My boy had set up a little distribution center.
Wow.
So he was just selling weed from there. So I had to call the police and stop it and send him back, But it's to show you, they will try. Some of them will try. But, we have had a lot of others that came, did their time, they learned. You have to teach people how to speak to each other. This thing about screaming at people sometimes doesn't work. They will scream back at you, and we have to learn to respect people. We do not respect, And, society is changing every day. That's something we have to adapt to.
So you said too that there are a lot of problems in the home at times that cause these youngsters to react the way they are reacting and behaving.
Oh, definitely. I think we have so many broken homes in St. Martin. Look, like I said before, we have to accept that we have problems. We have self-induced poverty in St. Martin. That is something we have to deal with.
And I don't want to admit it.
There are different types of poverty, and I'm talking about the one that I call self-induced. We bring it upon ourselves. You know, very often we scream, "Oh, government didn't do this," or "Oh, government didn't do that," and that is just the easy way out. So, what have you done lately for yourself? Sitting down, smoking dope or drinking, or walking around, or looking for a job, but I come in there. So why you pay me? Also, I don't work for that kind of money. You're not serious. You're not there to help yourself.
Yeah.
You're there to say that I did this or I did that, but I didn't get what I wanted. No. But, Samaritan also has to start dealing with being straightforward with its people. You have to take care of your own. We cannot be taking care of the world and not ourselves. And I'm not talking about born here people. For me, anybody that has made St. Martin their home should have and has a Dutch passport should have equal rights like the rest. I'm not telling you, this one has more rights over that. I don't get into those type of conversations because it doesn't lead nowhere. There's now placed a definition that tells me what an indigenous Samaritan is or what a real Samaritan is. So, to get in that discussion doesn't make no sense. But we have to take care of our own. If you have 15,000 people illegally on this island and you're not doing nothing about that, then you're not really helping the other 50,000 that is here legal, because those 15,000 are going to put a burden on the system from the 50,000, if you like it or not. You cannot throw away a life, or you cannot lose a life because you don't want them treated at the hospital, but somebody has to pay for it because they can't. So there are going to be effects on your society, and we have so many standalone homes. When I say standalone, just the mother with 3-4 kids sometimes, have to work 2 jobs. Those youngsters are going to be brought up by the TV or by their friends on the block. And then we wonder why they are so. We are allowing the situation to be that way. If you look at house rent on this island and you look at minimum wage, the question is very simple: how do they pay for it? So that you get 2-3 people living in one house and trying to share rent, and then half of their money go every day at Western Union. Go and see how the money leaves the island. And that's what we call self-induced poverty, because they will live under conditions that are not normal to live under, so they can send money abroad to take care of their families. And I understand that. But in the same breath, don't tell me then that you're living in poverty. It's a choice. You made that choice. So, these are the type of things that I'm saying we have to watch, because they have effects on the kids. They do affect the children, because the children want to be like the other one that got a pretty pair of shoes. I mean, parents see kids come home with cellular phones that are valued $500 and don't ask a question. They ask, "You got one for me too?" These are the things that we have to change. These mindsets we have to change.
And so when it comes to the adults now, you also get adults coming into the program at the department?
Sure, yeah. You have adults that might have had too much to drink and had a fight, they'll get community service. If things didn't get out of hand too bad, very often they'll get community service, or minor incidents. I mean, if it's a serious incident, they go to jail most of the time, or if they're convicted, they might get community service from the judge, and then they will have to do that through the organization. If the organization chooses Public Works, then they will come by us. If they choose another entity to help them, then they'll go there. But the problem is very often you don't find many entities that are willing, to why would I bring a thief into my building for him to go thief? So I can put a rat by the cheese. A lot of people are very afraid, and that was one of the main reasons that I opted to really start it. Because if you don't give them that second chance, if you shun them, then they're going to do it again, because nobody cares anyway.
That's quite interesting. I didn't realize that, but that makes a lot of sense. A lot of companies will not want to deal with.
Why would I bring in a criminal in my company for him to hustle me? For me to say I was a good citizen, I was a good corporate citizen. I tried to help, but he steal from me. I know they did it by the zoo. The zoo brought in people and fellows them clean out the zoo.
Wow.
So it's sad, but it's true. It's reality.
Did you get any resistance from your staff when you started off the program at Public Works?
No, I have a staff. I love my staff. These guys and girls, we have always, and maybe it's the group I come from, or the people around that I attract to me. Service to a third party without asking for something in return has been has been good in my department. I must honestly say, I come from the lionistical world, with lions. Some of the employees in my office are also lions.
Oh, okay.
So, I have some people that are strongly in the church. So no, I have a good group of workers. The boys in the yard, I have a nice group there that supports us with these youngsters. So no, I can say. Let me say, knock on wood, I'm very fortunate. I have a very good group of people.
We'll get to speak with Mr. Buncamper. Mr. Buncamper is head of infrastructure management, and we're here to speak with him about his work with youngsters that come into the department from the public prosecutor's office, right? They have the option to go to prison or come and do some community work, and then their record is no longer a criminal record. Is that correct?
Something in that sense it is. There's a little more than meets the eye, but it's simply put quite close, yes.
Yeah. So, but let me ask this, because I know there's an ongoing case in you and your family. Is that affecting your work with the youngsters in the community service?
Oh, no, not at all. Look, my commitment to these youngsters started 15 years ago. I don't even know if I should call it a case, but let me put it this way. The wrongdoings the public prosecutor believe I did will be settled in courts in the month of March. March 16th and 17th is our case. After 5 years, finally, we'll get our day in court.
So there won't be no delay this time?
No, well, unless they do something. But no, we are now set to go in that date, and then it's over. They don't even have a case, in my opinion, and they know that too, but that's secondary. But coming back to the youngsters, no, I would never let something of a personal nature affect something to a third person. I don't think that would be fair towards the third person. Like I said, I have dedicated 15 years of my life to work with these youngsters, and there's no reason for me to stop now. I will continue as long as the opportunities are there to help these youngsters, give them a second chance and a different perspective on life. I would gladly give my free time to do such.
Well, Mr. Buncamper, I want to thank you for accepting the invitation, because when I called you and asked you about this program, I know we did an interview very, very long ago. Yeah. And it's good to hear that it's still continuing and you're working at improving the lives of the young people.
Well, Oral, thank you, very much for having me here. Naturally, it would be remiss of me not to thank all of those others that are involved, because it's not a Buncamper show. It's a show where a lot of different parties and stakeholders are involved. And let me thank all of them, because together we make a difference in the lives of these youngsters.
And they go on to, some of them, to become productive citizens.
We have one of them that has gotten his master's degree in the meantime.
Wow.
So it shows you, yes, you can make a difference in people's life. If you only start with one, it will work.
That's incredible. Thanks a lot again. Much success.
Thank you very much, Arl.
And that's it for now. We'll see you next time right here on Speaking of Everything. Until then, good night. Take care. Bye.